Welcome to the Domino Effect, where we explore how social and legal issues intersect. I'm Jessica Thomas, a family law attorney, and your host. In this episode, we look at the devastating impacts of homelessness on our community and discuss ways to help. We have three special guests joining us who will share their perspectives and experiences working on behalf of unhoused individuals. Together, we'll explore what more we can do as a community to address this issue. Perpetual goodness goes a long way, and every person, company, and organization can positively impact our community, making Central Florida one of the most desirable destinations in the nation. We each have a responsibility to assist in some way when possible and continue to maintain the cycle of development and improvement in our community. This is the Domino Effect. Sometimes it's easy to ignore a problem that doesn't directly affect us. The concept of something being out of sight and out of mind allows us to continue our everyday routine and pass judgment when we're on the outside. Looking in, however, as a community, it is our responsibility to take care of each other because issues affect us all. Often neglected and chastised individuals who experience homelessness are just individuals who found themselves in an unforeseeable circumstance that can truly happen to any one of us. Our first guest is someone who has not chosen to turn a blind eye and dedicated his time volunteering with the Legal Aid Society as a pro bono attorney. Attorney Michael Barber, thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, let's start from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're at, and how did you find yourself with legal aid?
Yeah, I'm a local. I was born and raised here in Orlando, grew up here, always felt very strong ties to this community. Stayed here for college, UCF, went off to law school at University of Florida, and came back.
Sorry.
Yeah, came back, started my career. My first couple years, I couldn't really get too involved with legal aid. I was a prosecutor, and so you're working for the government. And then when I got into private practice, I pretty much immediately realized that that's something I want to get involved with and doing more pro bono work and giving back. Because, it's easy to write the check every year and give money, but you can have so much more meaningful of an impact if you're willing to dedicate a little bit of your time to helping these people. And so, I've worked with legal aid for years, trying to take pro bono cases, trying to help put on trainings for other attorneys.
Wow.
I've done several of those, and as of last year, I'm now on the Legal Aid Board of Trustees and trying to continue with that work.
Congratulations, that's huge.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Tell me about some of your personal experiences with kind of the homelessness that we are experiencing in the Central Florida area and how that nexus has come with your legal aid work.
Yeah, I don't think it comes as a surprise to anyone living in the Orlando area that homelessness has become an increasing issue that we need to address. I think the numbers are much higher than they were just 10 years ago, and we see that in our everyday lives. But it's really easy for a lot of people to kind of maybe build up some calluses on the heart. You turn the blind eye, you walk past, and but what's really important is for people in the community to try to reach out to some of these individuals and try to help them. And sometimes just one at a time, you can have an impact on one person's life and change that person's life, and may not be enough to fix the entire issues, all the issues surrounding homelessness, but one at a time, you do what you can when you can.
When we talk about helping from a logistical standpoint, I've been a pro bono attorney with legal aid as well. I wonder sometimes, how do you serve a client who is homeless? How are you contacting them? How are you meeting with them? How are you prepping them for a hearing? How is that happening?
It does pose some unique challenges. A lot of times they don't have a landline or steady cell phones. A lot of times their phone numbers change every few weeks because they're buying phones with prepaid minutes on them. Obviously, by the very definition, they don't have stable residence. You don't always know where you can send a letter to, and a lot of them don't have email addresses. Some do. A lot of them take advantage of public libraries to access email, and so a lot of times that does become my main source of communication. And sometimes you have to help them make an email address. I mean, it's easy. I mean, we've all done it. It takes a couple minutes, and so I'll help them maybe make a Gmail account and advise them to check it every day or every few days so that I can communicate with them. A lot of times you also have to be very cognizant that, homelessness is a symptom. It's usually not the root cause. There's usually a lot of underlying issues that these people are facing, a lot of challenges in their life. And when you're representing somebody who is homeless, one of the most important things you're doing is you're issue spotting. You're talking to them about their life. You have to listen, and then you have to try to spot what are the real underlying issues that are providing the biggest challenges for them, and can we help them overcome those? And so some of the common ones are, so a lot of people who may be homeless, are sleeping in their cars. They live out of their cars. However, a lot of them don't have valid driver's licenses. They don't have IDs at all. And a lot of times it has to do with simple things such as unpaid tickets. They don't have a stable address. So of course when they get a ticket, maybe they ran a red light, ran a toll. Well, where does that go? They never see it. So then it becomes a ticket, and then it goes unpaid, and now their license is suspended. So one of the things I do is I will pull their full driving record. It only costs about $20. So a lot of times I just pay for that out of the firm as an expense and pull the record, and then go through it line by line and see, is there something I can do to help fix their driver's license, to get them a valid license. So at the very least, well, it didn't solve all their issues in one stroke, but at least now they don't have to worry about the constant threat of being arrested for just living in their car. Because what a lot of people don't realize is, even if you're not driving, if you're seated in your driver's seat of your car and it's parked, you can still sometimes get in trouble with the police. And so what happens when you have to move your car? You have to actually move it to another location. Now you're forced to drive, because a lot of these people have to move from parking lot to parking lot. So helping them get a valid license can be one of the most important things. It gives them identification that they can use to apply for things like government aid and housing and things like that. And it means that they're not under the constant threat of getting additional criminal charges. And so that's one of the many things that I've helped do for my clients. And that's one of the first places I look is, can we get you valid ID, and can we get you a valid driver's license?
When you think of, because you bring up a great point, often we think homeless and we think on the street, but you just talked about someone living in their car, or we sometimes forget that there's a transient community of people in these kind of rent by the week hotels or things like that. Are those some of the other kind of issues that you've experienced, especially with your work with legal aid or from being on the board, of seeing that that's another aspect of the homeless epidemic and some of the legal issues that come from it, like eviction as well?
Oh, absolutely. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of issue. There's some people who are literally sleeping on the streets, and then there's people who are trying to raise families in a series of motels, where they're staying at different motels week to week, and then there's people sleeping in their car. So there's a whole spectrum, I guess you could call it. And the issues facing people on different spots on the spectrum could be completely different. And so that comes back to the issue spotting, and it comes back to listening to them, asking them follow-up questions, about them, about their life, what are the challenges you face, and then trying to come up with a game plan to see what you can do to help address those issues, because they are different depending on, what kind of level of homelessness that they are experiencing in that spectrum we were talking about.
And I know we're almost, to the end of our time, but I just want to give you an opportunity for those local attorneys who are maybe nervous about jumping into being a pro bono attorney, worried about, like, how am I going to do this? I don't have this experience. Did you feel supported during your cases prior to being on the board to be able to kind of tackle these types of legal issues that affect our homeless community?
Absolutely. Legal aid was extremely supportive, and you don't need to worry about, well, I don't know that much about this area of law, because they put on trainings. They will help train you. They will help guide you. They will tell you what you need to know to get through the process. There are a lot of attorneys like me who volunteer to do trainings at legal aid. So for instance, when I was talking about, knowing how to go through a driving record and analyze the issues and how to fix it, what motions to file, that's a training I put on for a group of pro bono attorneys for legal aid. So they will give you the tools that you need to succeed at this. So don't worry about not having the experience. I highly encourage you to just, any attorney who's considering it, just dive right in. It is the most rewarding work that I do. And it really is. I mean, you have to think about, why did I do this? Why did I become an attorney? Of course, there's the financial aspect to it. You can make a good living, but personally, I always try to remind myself, I got into this line of work to help people, and I try to constantly remind myself of that. And it is a great opportunity to help people who desperately need it. And so for me, it's been the most rewarding work I've done in my 13-year legal career, and I'd highly recommend any attorney to get involved. It's great that they send in checks every year, but getting involved, getting your hands in there, and doing the work is just so rewarding, and I can't recommend it enough.
Well, thank you, and thank you so much for being here today and being those boots on the ground and everything you do for the Central Florida community.
Thank you for having me, Jessica.
Michael's service to our community goes a long way. Up next, we have a very special individual who will share with us his experience on how he can help address homelessness as a community. Before that, let's take a quick moment to recognize our generous sponsors.
A disproportionate number of Floridians don't have access to the justice system. That's why Funding Florida Legal Aid exists to bridge this gap. Their mission is to increase access for the underprivileged by funding legal services, developing innovative tools and programs, supporting legal aid providers and the courts. Because of their efforts, they've been able to help veterans facing homelessness, children in the foster care system, men and women who've survived domestic violence, and securing benefits for our elderly and disabled. Doing good for the greatest in need, because everyone deserves access to justice.
Welcome back to the Domino Effect. Joining us now is someone who has done extensive work in our Orange County community to assist homeless individuals. He is a skilled leader, professional, and volunteer, and currently serves as the executive director of the Christian Service Center for Central Florida. Eric Gray, it is a pleasure to have you today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with the beginning. Tell me about the Christian Service Center.
So we've been around for 53 years and started off just as a grouping of small churches in the downtown area that in the early 70s were trying to address what was sort of the initial issue of homelessness, even back then. And there was no social service construct in the community at the time, and we were only a community of 240,000 people compared to the 2.4 million that we have now. So they decided to get together and try to pool their resources to help people in need. And then it added a soup kitchen, and over the years just continued to add different programs, but the focus is still the same, and that's trying to help adults and children who are experiencing homelessness get out of that situation and get them housed, hired, and healthy, and none of that has changed. We just get a little bit better at it each year.
Let's break that down a little bit. Housed, hired, healthy. Let's start with the beginning. What kind of services do you all offer in relation to housing?
So everything we do focuses primarily on housing. That's the first goal for us. We do prevention work, which is helping people who are right at the cusp of an eviction with rental assistance and even utility assistance, because if your power's shut off, that can break your lease as well. And then we also help people who are already experiencing homelessness. And we say homelessness, we mean literal homelessness, living in a camp, living in a car, living on cardboard, all of that literal homelessness, whether it's an adult or a child, and usually then if there's a child, it's both. And we'll help people to either relocate to live with families somewhere in the United States that have guaranteed that they will put them up for at least 6 months. We'll help people with what's called diversion, meaning if the barrier to them getting into an apartment is just the security deposit or first month's rent, we can help with that. And we also help people who are in severe, dire straits because of illness that they're experiencing. People who will never work again because of their health issues are so severe. And so our community has what's called a permanent supportive housing program. There are 1,600 people in that program in the 3-county area. And we're just one agency that's part of that overall network that's managed by the Homeless Service Network, which is the umbrella agency for all homeless programs in our community, kind of like United Way or United Arts. In this case, all federal funding in the community for any related issues to homelessness all goes through HSN. And so we work with every aspect of homelessness, from preventing people from entering it in the first place to making sure that if they're already on the streets, that we get them out of that in any way we can.
Now I want to go for a second. When we talk about people getting to you, it's especially interesting about the people being able to go to a family member. Maybe they're here in Florida and they're trying to get to California or New York. How do people get to you all to be able to see if they qualify for that or if they are even eligible for any of these services?
So most of our focus really is on Orange County. We're not restricted to that, but because we have 3 campuses in Orange County, that's where most of our guests come from. And they literally will come to our campuses. We have one in Ocoee, one in Winter Park, and then our main campus is in the Paramore Heritage community just west of downtown. So when they come to us, they could have been experiencing homelessness for a day, or in some cases years. Everybody's situation is different. But once we have the opportunity to sit down with them and evaluate their circumstance, we then try and see if any of our resources will help them immediately, and if not, what other agency in the community can we best connect them with that has the resources to help them in their unique situation. And so we're really blessed to have this network of providers, about 55 agencies in Central Florida that all work together.
Wow.
And we share a common database. It's kind of like electronic medical records, but in some ways even better, because we're not restricted hospital to hospital. Like we all share it in real time. So if somebody comes and shares their experience with me, and I put that into our database, that same person, they go to the Coalition or the Salvation Army or any of the other service agencies in town, they won't have to repeat that to them. All that information is captured, and so we're able to continue the process of assisting someone because of that shared database.
Now you mentioned hired as well. Now, when we're talking about these resources, that things like, I'm imagining like maybe a workforce or a scenario where you all are helping get them employed or employable. Is that also something you do?
So we're focused really just on getting people into jobs. So we have a nonprofit staffing company that is on our Paramore campus. It's called First Step Staffing. They're an Atlanta-based organization that has presence from California to New York, but this was their first Florida location. And we've just give them space as our guests so that they can run a staffing company. This is not a day labor type of company. Mm-hmm. This is part-time and full-time jobs. Wow. I think most people would be surprised that well over 80% of people experiencing homelessness are employed. So the idea, that the picture we have in our mind of someone at the bottom of the off-ramp with a cardboard sign really is representative of maybe 10% of the people who are experiencing homelessness in the United States. The more common picture that people should have would be someone who has a job and is probably living out of their car. That's the most common way that people are experiencing homelessness. And so we, for those people who don't have a job, and maybe they have a barrier such as a criminal background, lack of transportation, lack of ID, or even just lack of a home, can be something like as simple as lack of a phone. This organization, First Steps, helps them overcome those barriers so that they can get employed very quickly and make that part of the process of getting them into housing as well.
Now, this partnership you have with Steps, is that similar to a partnership like you have with the Legal Aid? And can you tell me about that partnership?
Yeah, so we work very closely with Community Legal Services of Mid-Florida through a community, what's called a medical legal partnership, which is intended to help people overcome barriers that might keep them from getting a job, getting them into healthcare, and most importantly, getting them into housing. So we have a full-time attorney and a paralegal that are on our campus in Paramore, but also spend some time on our campus in Ocoee and Winter Park. And they work on everything imaginable. If everything from simple eviction issues or even issues of divorce that are a barrier, to some minor immigration type of issues. Anything that is going to keep someone from getting out of the experience of homelessness because of a legal issue, that's what we're trying to address.
I know lastly, I know we're almost to the end of our time, but you mentioned healthy as well. So hired, healthy, homed. Tell me about the healthy aspect.
So this is the area where we're probably weakest, but making some progress. So we have a temporary medical clinic on our property in Paramore. We're right now getting ready to start construction on one of our 4 buildings to completely renovate it, to turn it into a medical clinic. with the focus being primarily on behavioral health, both mental health and addiction type of issues. There's a lot of assumption in the world that mental health is the number one contributor to homelessness, and it's actually not true. About 20% of Americans are suffering from either diagnosed or undiagnosed severe mental illness, and for people experiencing homelessness, that number is closer to 39%. So it is more, but there's no direct causal link. So people, right now, science hasn't really determined if the experience of homelessness was caused by someone's mental illness or was a result of their homelessness. And so we are just trying to address that, because right now there are no significant and satisfactory options for people who are experiencing homelessness and need mental health treatment anywhere in Central Florida. And so that's one of our big goals to do next, is to add that and to have that provision for people who are suffering from homelessness.
Thank you again for everything that you're doing for the Orange County community. Thank you for picking up this torch and choosing to help those most vulnerable in need, our homeless community.
No, thank you.
We are so grateful to have leaders in our community like Eric, who care enough to dedicate their careers to help build and advance our community. We would like to express our gratitude to him for sharing his perspective with us. We truly appreciate his advocacy. Before we meet our final guest, let's take a moment to acknowledge our generous sponsors. Stay tuned. We'll be back shortly.
A disproportionate number of Floridians don't have access to the justice system. That's why Funding Florida Legal Aid exists to bridge this gap. Their mission is to increase access for the underprivileged by funding legal services, developing innovative tools and programs, supporting legal aid providers and the courts. Because of their efforts, they've been able to help veterans facing homelessness, children in the foster care system, men and women who've survived domestic violence, and securing benefits for our elderly and disabled. Doing good for the greatest in need, because everyone deserves access to justice.
Welcome back. Our final guest for this show is a brilliant young woman who is extremely passionate about the work she does for foster children. Joining us now is the Guardian Ad Litem Case Coordinator, Maylin Jones. Thank you so much for being with us today, Maylin.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So let's start from the beginning. Who are you? How'd you get to legal aid? Why do you do legal aid?
Yeah, so that's a big question.
I know.
I have been at Legal Aid now for 3.5 years. It was actually my first job outside of college.
Really?
So this is like really and truly all I know other than my internship. Going into it, I literally didn't think I would be doing anything other than just working with children, but it just became this big complex thing of other issues too surrounding it, which is awesome to learn about, like substance abuse, domestic violence, and homelessness as well. Something that I've became really passionate about is my teenagers. I love them. I don't know why, because they're scary at first, but I love them so much, and that's just become just a big part of why I do what I do, is just seeing them just complete all of the challenges despite everything that they're going through. So that's something that's been really just motivating me to keep going and keep doing this kind of work. So in a nutshell, it's just a thing of constant learning that I've been in the last 3.5 years.
Talk to me a little bit about some of those teenagers and some of the challenges you mentioned. Specifically, are you running into, an issue of those teenagers being homeless?
Yeah, so sometimes I think that it's every case is so unique and so different. So what I like to do is make sure that they're aware of extended foster care. So something that happens that we see with a lot of the homeless population and people experiencing homelessness is that they may have been former foster youth. So
Really?
yes, absolutely. It's such a big kind of layered issue that I think a lot of society doesn't really know or talk about. So something that I like to make sure when I meet with my teenager, starting at 16, they get what's called youth transition meetings. So they have a whole team of people that helps them just accomplish just different goals for themselves, driver's license, all of the vital documents that they need to just kind of live and obtain employment and obtain housing one day. When you're in extended foster care at the age of 18, you can opt into it. It's completely voluntary, and so you probably would know that they don't want to do it. They don't want to be in the system anymore. So something that I like to encourage them to do is explain all of the benefits, explain, all of the good things about it. It's less invasive than traditional foster care when you're under 18. You have a supervised living arrangement. So it's just something that I like to make sure that they're at least aware of. And so from there, just making sure that they're enrolled and they're continuing to qualify by working or being in school, that's something that I think can really prevent the homelessness piece of it for sure.
So let me ask 2 questions to follow up to that. One, talk to me about people who are still maybe placed with a relative or a caregiver, but they're aging out. Can they still utilize that service?
Yeah, so with the caregivers, it depends. It depends if they're licensed or not.
Okay.
So you do have to be in licensed care at the age of 18.
Okay.
So I always like to make sure to ask the caregivers too, because we're not the caregivers advocates, we're the children's advocates, but sometimes things are in the best interest for the children that we need to make sure that the caregivers have or are aware of. So I always like to make sure that they're referred to level 1 just to get licensed and get those
Okay.
extra funding and benefits for sure. That's something I make sure of when I meet them.
Okay, because I could imagine some of our viewers maybe being interested and want to make sure that they understand.
Yeah.
Second question, how does legal aid help those teenagers or our youth in Central Florida who are homeless? How does legal aid have any services or programs or ways that they can help them with some of the legal issues they may be facing?
Yeah, so if they are in the dependency system, because I only truly know GAL on that level, but if they are in the dependency system, we like to make sure that they're at least placed somewhere by, with a non-relative, relative, or in foster care. Now, if you're an adult past 18 and you need an ID, we can help with that. You need an ID to gain access to shelters and just different kind of housing programs. So that is something that we can do. Other adults outside of foster care too, we do help with the seal and expungement process as well. So in a nutshell, it depends. Come on in and see what we can do for you, because every case is so different and unique.
Now, if we have a youth who is watching this and homeless and wants to get some of that help, how does it work if I'm a homeless youth and I need help? I don't have a parent who signs off. How does that work with legal aid?
I would say definitely if they come into our building or if they give us a phone call, I would definitely refer them out to different community resources. So we do have a large network of those, possibly contacting someone at the Department of Children and Families to help with that as well, to help find them and secure shelter.
Talk to me a little bit about some of the cases that you've seen where you've had a youth who are homeless, and what are some of the specific challenges facing our homeless youth?
Yeah, so I think with homeless youth specifically, I think it's just a challenge of finding them just secure and stable housing. So matching them maybe with people that could help them with that. So again, it's just all about knowing your community resources. Since legal aid doesn't provide any specific type of program or anything like that, we just like to make sure that they're connected to a network of people that can help them, either regarding case management or targeted case management or anything like that.
Now, I know we've been focused a little bit on teenagers, but in your years of experience with legal aid, I'm sure you've seen all ages of children. Tell our viewers a little bit about like how young, all the way up obviously to 18, how young have you seen some of our homeless youth?
Yeah, so the range, I have seen a couple of days old, straight out of the hospital, maybe substance exposed that was removed from the mother, all the way up to 22-year-olds. Extended foster care can go up to 22 with a specific disability. Otherwise, it's 21. So I have seen all ages. When I started, it's funny because I'm only maybe a year or two older than some of my oldest kids, so that was really funny to kind of work with those cases.
Now, what makes the teenagers your favorite as far as being able to provide services through legal aid for them?
Yeah, they're just hilarious. I love them. I think they have this just funny thing about them where, they're not going to let life get in the way of things. They're going to just be really just driven, and they're just so passionate about. A lot of the ones that I work with have been through a lot, so they're just passionate about helping others and just amazing people. It's just such an amazing population to work with.
When we talk about, some of these children, and we talked about caregivers and them being within the placement, but let's say I'm just a family out there in Central Florida with small children. I need help. My children, again, back to the legal nexus, that they may be truant because they're not making it to school. They're not getting, the resources that they desperately need. When you talk about some of these community partners, are you able to put these people in contact with them right off the bat? Are there any kind of intake processes that they need to go through or qualify?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically if they would call, they may be referred to our housing department specifically. Now, if I catch wind of something, I don't mind sending out an email or sending something with a list of all of the resources, sending them to 211 United Way, and just making sure that they are well connected. That's pretty much all we can do on that end specifically, but definitely if they give us a call, we'll be able to give them some sort of information.
Wow. How awesome that you have chosen this career to really give back to the Central Florida community. Is there a specific way that people can reach out? Can they come into the office? Is there a local office of legal aid here in Orange County?
Yes, downtown, and I don't know off the top of my head, it's off of Robinson Street, and then there is a phone number as well that you can call. Someone will answer all the time. Our receptionist is busy clicking all the buttons all the time. So yes, definitely give us a call, and we do have a website and a walk-in building.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing for Central Florida. Thank you for coming today, and thank you for talking and helping our homeless youth.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
I would like to express my gratitude to Malin for her unwavering commitment to advocating for our children, ensuring that they have the necessary tools to avoid homelessness and thrive beyond the age of 18. Despite their limitations, the staff at Legal Aid strive admirably to achieve their goals. To our viewers, thank you for watching, and we hope that you will join us again. I'm your host, Jessica Thomas, and this is The Domino Effect.
A disproportionate number of Floridians don't have access to the justice system. That's why Funding Florida Legal Aid exists to bridge this gap. Their mission is to increase access for the underprivileged by funding legal services, developing innovative tools and programs, supporting legal aid providers and the courts. Because of their efforts, they've been able to help veterans facing homelessness, children in the foster care system, men and women who've survived domestic violence, and securing benefits for our elderly and disabled. Doing good for the greatest in need, because everyone deserves access to justice.
The Legal Aid Society has existed for over 60 years, providing legal representation to clients on issues similar to those discussed in this episode. It is imperative that the community knows when faced with legal troubles, you are and should still be able to receive high-quality legal representation and access to justice, regardless of your income. If you are seeking assistance on a legal matter, you may contact the Legal Aid Society Law Firm by calling 407-841-8310. The Legal Aid Society is a nonprofit law firm that relies greatly on volunteerism and donations. For more information on how you can support this worthy organization, visit legalaidoCBA.org today. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Domino Effect. And remember, perpetual goodness goes a long way. See you next time.